Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt and this is Cutting Through the Matrix on the 26th of October 2010. Newcomers, look into my website. It's called cuttingthroughthematrix.com, and you'll see lots of other sites I've got listed there. These are the official sites, and this is the crazy length you have to go to just to make sure that when the big boys decide to give you problems with one site, you've got other ones to fall back on. That's how crazy it's been in the past. And it costs a lot of cash, of course, to put all these extra sites up. Never mind the work involved too. However, that's the way it is. And bookmark these other sites for future reference in case the main ones go down again. And also remember too, if you do get sticking on the COM on download, that's because too many folk are going in at one time. So I'm told by Yahoo. And you'll find you can try these alternate sites. Now they all carry the audios. They all carry a lot of transcripts of the shows for print up in English as well. If you want audios and transcripts in other languages, go into alanwattsentinel.eu and take your pick there for print up. And there's quite a lot of them to choose from. And remember too that you're the audience that brings me to you. I depend upon you to support me. But this is not a business. It's not a business. And it's a necessity. That's what it is. And I only came out really before 9/11 even happened, because it was time to tell the public something. I knew what was coming along, an idea something really nasty was happening, only because it kept talking about the 21st century and the beginning of a new era and all that it entailed, a new world order. They were talking about this a long time before 9/11 happened in 2001. And since I've been reading all the books and biographies of the big boys involved and all the big institutions, I knew that something big was planned and had a good idea what it was. I also knew that they'd have to use military techniques and kind of martial law techniques to bring it through. So, as I say, it's up to you to support me. You can buy the books and so on for sale. That's all I have out there. And that'll keep me going, I hope. From the US to Canada, you can send a personal check to buy them, an international postal money order. You can also use PayPal to donate or to order. If you want to order a book, you'll see the prices listed on the site. Send the PayPal donation, followed by the appropriate email with your name, address, and order on it. Same across the rest of the world. Some people remember send cash. That's still accepted by the banks. And you can also use Western Union in Europe and other places, but it's kind of expensive. Some people use MoneyGram from other countries in Europe. But as I say, cash still comes through, and PayPal for sure. That's the fastest way of getting it here. Eventually we'll have one service for the whole world. You know that too. It'll all be wireless, because everything must be one in this new world order. Everything must be one. That's their logo basically. One corrupt bunch running the whole planet and one system, instead of a whole bunch of corrupt ones running the planet and a variety of sublet systems all loaned out to subcrooks and so on. Because that's really what we're living in and have been for a long time. You know, they say there's no honor amongst thieves. And it's not quite true. And everything really depends upon perception. It truly does belong to perception. And how you view things and how you're taught to view things. From the thieves' points of view at the top, they believe and they will, no kidding, they'll tell you they're serving the world. They're serving the world system. All the big players. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter how many billions of dollars they themselves personally have raked in this new world order. They'll tell you they're serving the system. And that's how the psychopath will always rationalize whatever they do. It's all to do with perception. And of course, you can rationalize everything that you do as well and say it's for the public good. And you can get away with murder. Literally. Back with more after this break. Hi folks, we're back and we're cutting through the matrix, just talking about perception really, and how humans can rationalize pretty well anything they do, especially those who climb to the top. And they're rather arrogant about it too, because they don't like being questioned, and they don't like being contradicted for sure. And they belong to all the big clubs. They've climbed all the big clubs in their careers. And I actually wonder about how many people it really took to run a world. And when you look into your own countries and you go to other countries, you see very few people really, same names crop up all the time that were picked out of university or the same private schools. And they shoot to the top because they're chosen to shoot to the top. They're very dependable by the gangsters who already run the system. And that truly is how you run. But they're not just gangsters. In a sense, they like to, even their little Bohemian Grove parties and so on, they'll wave the pirate flag, etc. Because you might say they're pirates. The pirates technically were a brotherhood who were sworn not to attack each other. Only the other merchant seamen and frigates of other lines, but they themselves were a club with their own codes of honor, they called it. And we shouldn't be surprised because they came out of the Knights Templars and they had their own little club, as we well know. Lots of documentation on it, a lot of farce as well, but a lot of truth there too. And we've got the various higher levels of fraternities, which are way above the normal things down in your local level, which makes sure that the little clique down below runs your own little town and makes sure who gets the local contracts and so on. It's all to do with contracts and public purse money. Really, from the bottom level from your council right to the top in the federal level, it's all to do with who gets their hands in the cookie jars and who they give it to and how much of a kickback they get themselves and how much of a reward they're going to get themselves when they leave their particular position and get put into other private corporations and so on. And just one example that came in today, one out of many examples I've got here, but it's about Laura Sidney Eagleburger, you know. I mean, with a name like that, you have to be a winner, right? You couldn't just go into open up a shop or something. Lawrence Sidney Eagleburger. And it says here, became a member of the Iraq Study Group in November 2006, following the November 8th, 2006 nomination of group member Robert M. Gates by President George W. Bush to serve as Secretary of Defense and to replace Donald H. Rumsfeld, who resigned the same day. Eagleburger, who was called a retired Foreign Service officer, served under Group Code Chair James A. Baker III, and so on and so on and so on. But then you look at what he's served in before. I like how they call it serving, eh? How do you like that kind of loot for serving? Did they get paid? And it says here, he was born in Milwaukee in 1930. Described as a career diplomat, Eagleburger joined the Foreign Service in 1957, held a series of embassy, State Department, National Security and Defense Department posts before serving ambassador in 1977 to 81 to Yugoslavia. He was State Department Assistant Secretary 81-82 and Under Secretary 82-84 before serving as Deputy Secretary of State 89 to 92 and Secretary of State 92 to 93 under George Herbert Walker Bush, becoming the first Foreign Service officer to hold the latter post. Now it says here he also serves as president of Kissinger Associates, Inc., and currently senior foreign policy advisor with Baker, Donaldson, Behrman and Caldwell, a Washington, D.C. law firm. As a member of the board of directors of the Halliburton Company, he's member of the audit, the compensation and management oversight, and the nominating and corporate governance committees. He's also in charge of the Holocaust money retrieval for all survivors, 200 Kissinger Associates. But it says Mr. Eagleburger is one of the United States leading experts in foreign policies. It's amazing how Kissinger and Brzezinski and Eagleburger and so a whole bunch of them there in that little club are all to do with foreign policy and strategy and geopolitics and planning future wars and how they personally will profit from the very companies they end up working for as they're in and out of politics. Yeah. He says he's known throughout the world for his role during the Gulf War in the early 1990s and has remained a prominent government and private sector advisor in the Middle East over recent years. It says Mr. Eagleburger has nearly 4 decades of international political experience serving as a U.S. Secretary of State during the President Bush administration. He also held posts of Deputy Secretary of State, Under Secretary of State of Political Affairs, Assistant as Secretary of State for European Affairs and U.S. Ambassador to Yugoslavia. Yada, 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 yeah. But anyway, it says now he's currently the chairman of the International Commission on the Holocaust Era Insurance Claims in Washington, D.C. He's just rolling in the cash, eh? Anyway, here's what he was on. It says affiliations. Now, you can imagine most of you, even you who think you've gone to the better schools and colleges, and just jumping into this lot right off the cuff. His affiliations has either served or is serving with the following. Chairman Emeritus Academy of Diplomacy, Director Atlantic Institute, 1987, Director Halliburton Company since 1998, all the government contracts, Director, International Foundation for Education and Self-Help, no kidding. Director, Conoco Phillips. Director, Stimsonite. Director, Universal Corporation. Director, Corning Corporation. Director, Comsat. Advisory Board, Oil Space. Strategy Board Member, Appian Group. Member, Council on Foreign Relations, 88-2001. Member, Trilateral Commission, 1992-1998. Advisory Committee, AmeriCares, at least in 2004. Former Directory is my party too. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe that's where the big party when they've really looted the planet. I don't know. National Honorary Advisory Council, Council for America's First Freedom. So, these guys just happen to be at the right place at the right time, don't they? Don't they just happen to be in the right place at the right time? Wouldn't you think so? And I'll put this link up there and you can follow it on because there's a lot more you can trace it all to and so on. But you see, as I say, these guys at the top do not see themselves as crooks. I don't care how much they pocket. And they don't see anything wrong with going into government and setting up their geopolitics for wars. And then as they got it started, they leave the political arena for a year or two and go to work for Halliburton, the big companies that rake in the cash from the taxpayer, and then go back into politics again. There's nothing wrong with that. To them, that's normal strategy. But after all, you see, these are the Olympians. These are the people who run the planet and guide it for all you little peasants who would just make an awful mess of it if it was left up to you, you see. In other words, they're chosen at school by pre-existing associations. And the higher the school goes, the more they will select out of those schools the right kind of people who can keep their mouths shut and who are tested to keep their mouths shut and can keep secrets and can turn a blind eye when required. They're all tested, believe you me. But that's only one little example of what really is going on. And it's just incredible. Here's one too. It's about the making of Halliburton. And it's from Counterpunch. It's called Sticky Fingers, the Making of Halliburton by Jeffrey Sinclair. There's no more pungent symbol of the corrupt nature of the Bush administration's invasion and occupation of Iraq than Halliburton, the Houston, Texas-based oil services conglomerate, which has made billions from the war even in the face of charges of massive overbilling, shoddy work, official bribery and political influence peddling. Well, there's nothing new in that. See, to them, that's normal. It's amazing how the citizenry of every country are kept in a state of kind of naivete. Because you're taught to be honest and be good, and be honest, and you all get along, and you have no idea this is normal standard practice. When Brian Mulroney was up in government in Canada, and the Airbus scandal came out, he said, because it blew up, that there's bribes getting offered for the particular contract. And it came out and it emerged, and there's a guy in Canada admitted this. He was, I think, of German ancestry, and he says, this is normal standard business practice. Massive bribing goes on using taxpayers' money. But we're kept in the dark, absolutely in the dark. It says the remarkable thing is that Halliburton's looting of Iraq and the U.S. Treasury happened in broad daylight, right under the nose of the press, the Democrats, and Michael Moore, who made Dick Cheney's former company the bête noire of his film 9/11. Nothing deterred the company from capitalizing on the war it helped orchestrate. Even the Pentagon's own team of auditors who nailed Halliburton's red-handed for bilking the government for $108.4 million and overcharges for only one task order of his work in Iraq found the report languishing in a kind of bureaucratic Netherlands for many months. The damning investigation by the Defense Contract Audit Agency was completed in early October of 2004 and shipped up the line to Pentagon's dark triumvirate, Douglas Feith, Paul Wolfowitz, and Donald Rumsfeld. And there it sat. The Pentagon's civil leadership mothballed the explosive report for more than 5 months until after the election, the inauguration, the State of the Union address, and the Defense Department's budget request for all safety transpired. It was all under the rug. Even Congress was denied a peek at the report findings until 2005. The Pentagon rejected 12 separate requests from Congressman Henry Waxman, the California Democrat who spearheaded the ad hoc congressional inquiry into Halliburton's contract abuse. It's probably because they were working for another company that wanted to be in contracts. Because that's how it really works. You don't have any real heroes in this world. I hope you realize that. In politics, definitely not. Anyway, there's a whole list of stuff that they were billing here. And how much, and for what, even for donuts, in the millions of dollars. And it's quite something else altogether. And it says here, the Pentagon used Iraqi oil proceeds to overpay Halliburton, says Waxman. And then the company and the Pentagon sought to hide the evidence of these overcharges from the international auditors. Call it the oil for contract scandal, but he didn't hear daily drumbeats about the outrageous rip-off on Fox News. When someone finally leaked the audit to Waxman's office, the documents disclosed a thick wad of Halliburton billings that the Pentagon bookkeepers deemed illogical. The most peculiar billing found in a series of transactions was a $27.5 million charge for shipping cooking gas and heating fuel that the Pentagon auditors valued at $82,000. That's not a bad profit. You bill them for $27.5 million, eh? For something worth $82,000. And a lot more than that. Back with more after this break. Hi folks, we're back and we're cutting through the matrix. Talking about Halliburton, just a little bit about it because it's an amazing history really that's gone into it. And that would take so long to even go through, and not all the guys associated with it too, of course. And it is a fascinating history, how it started off, and how a whole bunch of politicians eventually got involved in it down the road, and then how Halliburton even put certain politicians into office who became presidents at times. Anyway, it said here that the auditors examined only a single task order on Halliburton's scandal-plagued contract with the Army Corps of Engineers, yet the report lambasted nearly every aspect of the deal, from the no-bid award to the cost-plus nature. How would you fancy that for a deal too, eh? No bids. You know, we're picking you and that's it. In this free enterprise system, eh? And it says that there was an almost total lack of supervision of the work orders and the subcontractors. And that's how Halliburton really made its money, is getting the government contracts and subcontracting out. You'd be surprised all governments work this way. And all the government orders you get, right down to the guys at the bottom that actually do the work. You might go through 10 different companies that are really companies in name only. They just hire lesser workers and take a cut and pass it on down. And it says from May 2003 to March 2004.
Hi, folks. I am back on again. I think there's a storm going outside, or something. I'm not going to blame the usual agencies tonight. It could be the storm. It's really blowing crazy, and the wind is lashing down. Anyway, back to Halliburton. It said here that the Corps of Engineers bills totaling more than $875 million for supplies of fuel to the U.S. operations in Iraq. For the task alone, the Pentagon auditors estimate that Halliburton overbilled the government by at least $108.4 million, and that's real money even by Pentagon standards. But that's not only a rough opening bid for the true scale of the looting, in large part because the company's indefatigable stonewalling. The government's auditors report accused Halliburton of misleading the government inspectors at nearly every turn. For example, the auditors alleged that Halliburton simply refused to hand over any information on its subcontractors in Kuwait. Halliburton failed to demonstrate its prices for Kuwait fuel were fair and reasonable, and the auditors wrote in their reports. But just one massive, incredible list of what they were charging the U.S. taxpayer. Incredible. It says the Defense Contract Audit Agency report comes on top of previous investigations tagging Halliburton and its Kellogg, Brown and Root subsidiary. That's a very important subsidiary, you see. Kellogg, Brown and Root. It's just fantastic history. For more than $442 million in unsupported billings in its work in Iraq, including charges for meals that were never served, $45 cases of pop, unnecessary heavy equipment, tailoring fees, and $152,000 for movie screenings. In all, the report prepared by the Democratic Party Committee estimates that Halliburton's overcharges in Iraq alone exceeds $1 billion. It'll be a lot more than that, I think. And it goes on and on and on. But anyway, as I say, they're hammering the previous regime, but as far as I'm concerned, one regime just follows the next regime and carries on anyway. And these guys generally change their names, at least the companies do. Even Blackwater's changed their name as well, and it's still going strong, and they're still getting massive contracts from the U.S. government, where they don't want to put their own troops in, they just hire the mercenaries. And that's to be the war types from now on. That's how it's really worked out. Now, I've talked about this great communitarian idea that they've pushed, planned an awful long time ago, really over 100 years ago. I've no doubt that's how far they planned, how long the 100 years would last, what they'd do in that 100 years, and how they would take it down at the end, and then put it into communitarianism, as we're all utterly stinking poor, you see. And Britain, of course, spearheads the way with it. And this article here is from the Observer, and it's about what they're doing with the poor families in big cities now, getting ready for the communitarian idea as they lay off all the civil service and the infrastructure that used to support all the fallout of the awful system of unemployment and so on. They're doing away with all that, and it will come down to your local community with your local common purpose leader, no doubt, to deal with all the problems. And here's what they're planning to do. The council's plan for exodus of poor families from London. This is how they're doing it. And it says here, it's tantamount to cleansing the poor out of rich areas, a brutal and shocking piece of social engineering, says John Cruddas, Labour MP for Dagenham. Ministers were accused last night of deliberately driving poor people out of wealthy inner cities, and as London councils revealed, they were preparing a mass exodus of low-income families from the capital because of coalition benefit cuts. They're slashing back on all the benefits and so on that used to just keep them going. The representatives of London boroughs told a meeting of MPs last week that councils have already block-booked bed and breakfast and other private accommodation outside the capital, from Hastings on the south coast to Reading on the west and Luton to the north, to house those who will be priced out of the London market. It's be for the ultra-wealthy only, you see. And that'll be the super city. Of course, it was marked down years ago by the UN. The super cities will have no poor living within them. You'll be living in your old shacks, for your communitarian area. Back with more after this break.
Hi folks, we're back and we're cutting through the matrix. Just reading an article here about the new wonderful method of cutbacks as they restructure the countries and go into austerity, you see, which is all planned a long, long time ago, long before you ever heard of it, and in fact long before you heard of the crash. And as they cut back on all the social services, and early retirements being given to thousands and thousands of civil servants and bureaucrats and all the rest of it, as you go down to your local area of volunteerism, the volunteer workers, and that's where you'll be bunged into these little shacks where you help each other, no doubt, and you'll have little commissars running your lives for you and making sure that you do what you're told, as long as you attend the committee meetings. That'll be mandatory. Anyway, it says here, councils in the capital, this is in England, London, are warning that 82,000 families, more than 200,000 people, face losing their homes because private landlords enjoying a healthy rental market buoyed by young professionals who cannot afford to buy will not cut their rents to the level of caps imposed by the ministers or politicians. And it says the controversy follows comments last week by Ian Duncan Smith, the Work and Pension Secretary, who said the unemployed should get on the bus and look for work. Isn't that nice, isn't it? Britain's awfully famous for that. Get on the bus and look for work. Another unnamed minister said the benefit changes would usher in a phenomenon similar to the Highland clearances in the late 18th and early 19th century. Actually, on in the 20th century, the last house they burned down was in 1948. I thought that, throw that in. You'll see it in the Edinburgh Museum if you walk up the steps. When landlords evicted thousands of tenants from their homes in the north of Scotland. In a sign that housing benefit cuts are fast becoming the most sensitive political issues for the coalition, John Cruddas, the Labour MP for Dagenham, last night accused the government of deliberate social engineering. Well, of course that's what it's about. It's all about social engineering. That's really what communism is. In fact, when the communists actually had a man back in the times of Stalin who created the first social engineering machine. It was all Cogs and all the rest of it. They still haven't figured out how it worked. And it was supposed to illustrate how the big society all worked together in their common purpose. And that's how they try to run society, like a big machine. They used the same data banks, of course, as the Rand Corporation. And I'm sure, in fact, the Rand Corporation had a big hand in it, in fact, because when you judge what they were doing in the Soviets with back home in the US, they're exactly the same policies and so on, using the same computers eventually, and trying to work everything down into numbers and people predictability factors, etc. And they said they could really work a society like a big machine. And they're still doing it today. Only difference is they're getting rid of the rusty parts, that's the poor, and going to bung them out into the wild somewhere and probably give them a tent, maybe from the United Nations, who knows. It says it's an exercise in social and economic cleansing, he said, claiming the families would be thrown into turmoil with children having to move school again and those in work having to travel long distances to do their jobs is tantamount to cleansing the poor out of rich areas, a brutal and shocking piece of social engineering. Well, that's what it is. And it was worked out a long time before they brought the present crash down, because the present crash, of course, was all worked out years and years before that. So it's all going to a timetable. That's all. It's a timetable. Now, there's a caller from Ontario. It's Clint. Are you on the line, Clint?
Yes, I'm here, Alan. Thank you
go ahead.
taking my call again.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to say I caught your interview this weekend on Alex's YouTube channel, the one he did with you at Prison Planet.
Yeah.
The 8-part. It was absolutely fantastic. I recommend it to anybody listening who haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it myself.
You should actually. Yeah. Well, you did it yourself, so you already you know too much about it. You should actually link that up on your site so people can see it.
Yep.
You mentioned a few things in that on how people are brainwashed in ways like through sports and other programming that are on TV. And like there's programs now for everybody and their brother as far as cooking and renovation shows and sports and all that. So it's a good tool for them. Now with the sports, I know from personal experience growing up that especially here in Ontario, everybody was into hockey or baseball, and with that, they also had rep teams, and that took a lot of time from families from traveling and spending a lot of money and getting into debt because of the costs and whatnot. So it actually was a good two-way tool for them, because not only did it take them away from learning what's going on, it also got them into debt.
Yes.
And that happened probably, I'm sure, in the States with football and baseball, in the UK with soccer, in Australia with rugby and whatnot. So it's worked well for them.
It did.
Now, another thing I just wanted to mention, the municipal elections were last night in Ontario.
Yep.
Now, there's probably a bunch of new councillors that were voted on to the townships throughout Ontario. Now, I have a number here for ICLEI with regards to Agenda 21. Now, I highly recommend that people contact their councillors and ask them about it. Now, the lady you can call, ICLEI, is the Director of Canada. Would you mind that I give her phone number out?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, her name is Megan Meany, and the phone number is 1-647-728-4394. Now, people can find this themselves as well at ICLEI.org. Just go to the members area and look for the numbers. But anyways, I highly recommend people call her and then find out who the representative is for their local townships, and then contact the councillor and ask them about Agenda 21 and what it's all about. And she told me personally that it has everything to do with just implementation of tax with regards to the global climate. And it's going to come down with every aspect of infrastructure within townships, from schooling to roads to just everything. And as we know, that's a scam. So that's a part of their agenda, and I think people should really wake up to that.
It's roads, it's everything. It's also to do with fulfilling the old plan that was to happen at this time. You were to be used for 100 years to conquer the planet for the big boys, and then they would demolish us and take us down to a pretty well third world status, except for some super cities. And even in the reports from the Canadian and the US and the British think tanks for their militaries, they've said the same thing, that there'll be some super cities left across the world, and they've named the places that will be left. And outside that would be very, very rural. The UN itself has also said in its own website that by the year 2030 there'll be very, very few people ever seeing, never mind living on the country, and those ones will be extremely rich. Now that'll be the same as this old Soviet system where they had their big dash house outside for the high diplomats and so on with their servants. But the rest of the public won't even be involved. And they went even further, that there'll be even the farmers they will use for what the existing farming will be bussed out of the cities to their workplaces and bussed back home at night. They don't want anyone living in the land, at least not the peasants anyway.
It's just like 1984, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, is this a program that Maurice Strong implemented himself with the UN? Because obviously, like, he tutored Al Gore, and Al Gore has since pushed this. Now, does this tie back to him?
He was a frontman. See, both Gore and Maurice Strong were frontmen for the big Rockefeller group. In fact, it was really one of the Rockefellers who drafted up the Earth Charter that they got everyone to sign on to, not as a treaty, but as a charter, but really had the same force as a binding treaty. And they got every country to sign on to it. And that was the beginning of it. Under that charter, no human had rights anymore. Only insects, animals, the land, etc. had rights. And this is how they're playing the game on the public themselves. Yeah. But they're also using, this is another thing too, if you go into the UN website, and I have had it before, I might give you the link to it if I can find it. But the UN had a little blurb on one of their sites, and it said that because so many people have found out what Agenda 21 is all about, we advise our members to use other names for the same agenda. And so they're using terms like sustainability and all of that kind of stuff instead. So all of that stuff is all Agenda 21.
Yeah, and then the Earth Charter was when it came in the UN, when they started?
At 92 was the first signing, and then they had another one later on, a few years later. And that's what they always do. They start off scratching the surface, they get that signed, they get another one, they go further with more demands, they get that signed, and so on. Yeah.
See, that's I like to get information like that because I always forward to the counselor who's a representative in my town, and it's funny, he's the son of a former mayor. So it's funny how all this ties in. But I like to send him information. I ask him questions. What's this mean? What's this mean? And usually I get no reply. But having said that, I just want to leave with a quote from Martin Luther King, and he once said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And I think that's important here. So people need to, really jump on this and end it before it goes too far.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost there now.
Yeah, it is. Okay, Alan, thank you for taking my call.
Thanks for calling in. But that's true. It really is almost too late, in fact. See, all the machinery to set up is already working in action in hundreds of places. Every town, even little old Sudbury, it's a little mining place, started up by the Rothschild family, by the way. That were the first ones in there in the 1800s. And little Sudbury, they've got their own environmental group that suddenly appeared out of nowhere, who now advise the local council. They've already been there only for a year. What the feds do is when they retire their top civil servants and so on, they'll give them an early retirement and then advise them after a training course to go into the little areas, settle down, they get help buying a house, they might get it for free, all paid for by the taxpayer. And then they're told to set up their NGOs and announce themselves in the newspapers. And that's no problem at all to get lots of publicity. And then they become suddenly overnight, they're on the boards directing the policies of your local council regarding environmentalism and all the rest of it. So they've been at this for years, long-term infiltration. I've talked to some who were given these courses from the federal government myself. 6-month course. I couldn't believe it. They call it pre-retirement courses, teaching them to be involved in community service, especially to do with the environment, so that when they retire, they won't get bored, but they'll get paid extra cash for doing it all, you see. Incredible. The folk haven't a clue how the real system works, and the government ain't about to tell you. Now, the poor queen, the queen bee, of course, is quite amazing. The Queen's £38 million a year offshore windfall, because she owns the seabed. I don't know if you realize that all the contracts the government dished out for the big wind farms happen to be on the land of big landowners who are all lords, you see, and relatives to the Queen. Just happen to pick those particular places. All you have to do is give them a little bit of land there, they stick up their wind farm, and you sit back and you get thousands of pounds per month because it's there. That's not bad, eh? You don't even have to mow the lawn. Huh? Anyway, it says here, the prince is to profit from his support from green energy. Of course he is. He can't make any money any other way because he's no brain. Lucrative deal is a masterstroke for Palisade, it says. The revenue is already soaring by 44% a year. This is the same Queen that tried to get our money for Buckingham Palace heating and that from the poor laws and claim the money that was set aside for the poor people from the government. This is the same person. And you think they're all, and people go out and applaud these crooks. Can you believe it? Oh. Anyway, they secured a lucrative deal that will earn them tens of millions of pounds from the massive expansion of offshore wind farms. They will net up to £37.5 million extra income every year from the drive for green energy, because the seabed within Britain's territorial waters is owned by the Crown Estate. The Queen owns the sea. Huh? Not bad, eh? I thought Nemo owned that, Captain Nemo. Under new measures announced by Chancellor George Osborne last week, the Royals will soon get 15% of the profits from the estate's £6 billion property portfolio rather than the existing civil list arrangement. And then it says, experts predict the growth in offshore wind farms could be worth up to £250 million a year to the Crown Estate. That's to the Queen. There are already 436 turbines in operation around the UK. There's the 7,700-mile coastline, but within a decade that number is set to reach nearly 7,000. Prince Charles is a vociferous campaigner for renewable energy sources such as these, but as opposed to turbines being erected on land, particularly near his own homes, so no doubt he'll put them on his tenant farmers' homes instead. That's generally how they do, eh? He has described wind farms as horrendous blot on the landscape and has refused to have any built at his Highgrove home or on the Duchy of Cornwall estate. But he's expressed enthusiasm for siting them offshore for mummy. Oh, that's nice. The Crown Estate said profits from wind farms in Britain's territorial waters, which extend almost 14 miles from the coast, could rise to £100 million a year, giving the Royals an extra £15 million. You know, she also gets a paycheck as well for her costs for waving her hand once in a while when she's getting pulled around that big golden carriage. Yep. Not bad, eh? Good. It's a good work if you can get it, mind you. It's good work if you can get it. All benefits. So, that's the world we live in. We call it the most advanced civilization that's been on the planet, and we're so advanced and caring, etc. And right now they're booting all the poor folk out of London while the Queen's getting her wind farms built and dragging in the cash. Doesn't do anything, just signs her signature and enrolls the cash. Not bad, eh? Not bad. I can remember years ago they found an old treasure at a place called Croy in Scotland. And they thought it was maybe some monks or something that had been invaded by the Vikings and buried all their gold wares and their goblets and all that. And the guy who found it didn't run off to smelt it down like he should have. He went and reported it, and the Crown immediately grabbed it from, because you see, anything that's found on the British land, doesn't matter who owns the property, so you only own 4 inches of the soil, all the land belongs to the Crown. And all treasures from the past belong to the Crown, even if they didn't even exist at that time as a royal family or any other descendants. Not a bad deal, that either, eh? That's pretty good. Pretty good. And it is announced that Afghanistan, of course, apart from its opium flourishing and heroin trade, is to develop $3 trillion in mining and their potential that this is there. $3 trillion in mining potential. And they're fighting over, I'm sure they've already worked out who's going to get it. Afghanistan is estimated to be sitting on $3 trillion worth of untapped mineral deposits, but poor infrastructure and investor caution are inhibiting development of its mining industry, its mines minister said. This estimate is based only on 30% of the country's area. There's still 70% we still have no idea about. Afghan Mines Minister Wahidullah Sharani told Reuters in an interview on the sidelines of an industry conference in Dubai on Monday. So that's only a fraction of the country, and there's $3 trillion worth being fought over right now. Never mind the pipelines that go through it as well, and the oil that's under there too, or as I say, the opium fields that now flourish since they kicked out the Taliban, who forbid them to be used. And of course, George Bush was the guy responsible for that. I'm amazed at how many photographs will show you soldiers, American or British, guarding the poppy fields to make sure that no one comes and nicks them for some neighbouring tribe. That's got to all go to heroin, you see. It's a big market. And they all need that cash, you know, for Halliburton and the big boys. From Hamish myself. I know it's not, though. Actually, I've got one more time to go. So we're back after this break. Hi, folks. We're back and we're cutting through the matrix. And we'll take Mark from Wisconsin. Are you there, Mark?
Yes, sir. Hello? I'm here.
Yes.
Hey, I was watching UN Ted Turner Classics, you know, the movies, the old-time movies, and they're colorizing the skies purple in there.
Yep.
You believe that? I mean, wait till they get the cloud and the Kindle system going full blast where they can change history every day.
Well, I always remember the Beatles singing the Tangerines, Marmalade Skies. Marmalade Sky. I thought, yeah, here we go, getting us all used to what's coming. Yeah.
Hey, I stopped over in Ireland not too long ago, and I went to Kilmaine Prison, the brainchild of Jeremy Bentham, Panopticon. And they actually they stopped short of saying that the prison was scientifically designed, but they said that everything in the prison was built for a reason. They had a kitchen in the bottom floor so that all the steam wafted up in the cells, and the walls were made of limestone, and everybody was getting TB.
Yeah.
So I think they actually planned on killing those people. Not only that, they served them their breakfast and lunch and dinner out of the toilet, out of a bucket. They would throw their feces out in the morning, put their food in it, put it back in their cells.
Well, that's the dehumanization processes and techniques they've used, and lots of experiments even since then too. Yeah.
Right. And I was going to talk the Easter Rebellion. They even said that those guys were in a secret society, and everything went wrong for the Irish in the Easter Rebellion. They found their ammo dumped the day before it was supposed to go off, and it was just a comedy of errors, like they had planned it so that they could bring in more British rule.
Well, they were completely infiltrated even then. That's the one thing you'll find about England, and even from the days of Queen Elizabeth I. They infiltrated every country. They're agents in amongst the people. And it's no different today. Afghanistan's riddled with informers, and every other country they go into is the same. So, same with Pakistan and so on. Same with Iran even. They've got all their informers waiting. They're passing all the data. They never sit back. They always make sure they've got hundreds of them in place for years, collecting the data so that they can take them down. And nothing can happen in this world today without the knowledge of those at the top. Nothing can happen. You could even start up a little group to put paintballs or something on someone's window without them knowing about it. That's why 9/11 could never have happened. Never have happened without the knowledge of the high intelligence agencies. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, I went to the New Grange Mounds too, or should I say the New Grange pyramids. They actually talked about the pyramids of Egypt and everything, and they never once told anybody in the tour that these mounds are actually pyramids that are just buried. I had to look that up on the internet. In 1913, I found an article where they called them pyramids.
Yes, that's right. And yeah, and of course there's much more to it all than that too. Very old history, and Scotland as well. There's some there that aren't even mentioned on the maps. But it's just incredible how ancient these people were. And they tried to stifle our history, make them look out to be savages of some kind or another. And meanwhile, they were building these astronomical cities, and they were astronomically based. They had the sun would come through the window or at the rising and the summer solstice, and only on that day would it come through and shine on the back. Yeah, and other ones for the moon and so on. So they were way ahead, of course. But it also shows you the world was tied together at some time in ancient prehistoric times with the same kind of buildings across the world. But it's very interesting. Yeah.
There are phallic symbols everywhere, and now I'm starting to see the same symbols in my own town in Madison, Wisconsin. It's crazy.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The generative principle, that's what it is. From Hamish myself from Ontario, Canada, it's good night to me, your God, or your gods go with you.